Misfits. This is a series exploring the struggle and beauty of dancing to a different rhythm, moving the wrong direction, and living life differently. The struggle happens when we see ourselves as negatively different, instead of simply different. God created us to be unique as individuals and unified as His people, but not to be uniformed in how we look. The beauty is that our differences don't create a confusing picture of disarray. Rather, they craft an amazing and meaningful mosaic of what it looks like to be human. Throughout this series, we'll be studying the Beatitudes. The word beatitude literally means blessedness. It's a divine joy and perfect happiness that is only found in a life lived with Jesus. At the end of this series, we'll all see the not-so-obvious truth that every misfit was made to fit.
Hi, my name is Jason Clark, and I'm the student pastor at the Sun Valley Community Church Tempe campus. And we're filming our third episode of Misfits right here in this thrift store. Now, here's the cool thing about thrift stores, is that at one point, everything in this room was brand new and shiny, and even something that was sought after and wanted. I mean, some of this stuff was probably a gift that somebody gave to somebody else. I mean, everything in here had purpose and intention and design. Like nothing that you would find in a thrift store was made by a manufacturer thinking nothing would happen to it. And this is the last place they want any of those things to end up. And yeah, I get it. This is America, and we're the best at throwing stuff away, right? You know, if it's not new, it's through. We're just gonna discard it and put it where it needs to go. And in all fairness, like some stuff is like, you know, it's old technology, right? Like we don't have use for a cassette tape anymore, or recording on a cassette. Like this stuff's irrelevant. But a lot of this stuff, like a majority of it, man, was just thrown away. And the reason is it lost its value. People looked at it and thought, this is worthless. See, at one point it was new, and then next thing you know, they're giving it away freely for nothing. So something happened between new and nothing with everything in the store. The value is what was lost. Now that's true for the things that are here, but it's also true for ideas and beliefs too. Like we live in a culture now where, you know, we're not just getting rid of outdated clothes or busted technology or old toys, but we're getting rid of ideas and beliefs altogether. I mean, we are putting them in some kind of cultural thrift shop where we don't want them and they're discarded. And a lot of them probably need to be there, right? Like, you know, in the 50s, doctors thought it was healthy to smoke. You would see campaign ads. They're like, this is great for you. Or people thought the earth was flat or believed in the Loch Ness Monster, all sorts of nonsense and things that are obviously ridiculous. But some values and ideas got thrown away that probably shouldn't have. And one that I think is really important that we're going to talk about today, a value that really has been pushed aside, is the idea of being humble and humility. See, I don't think humility is an antiquated idea of the past. Rather, I think it's a path forward to a better future. See, humility is this incredibly important thing, and it gets missed a lot. And I think the reason is because being humble isn't something we celebrate as a culture. I mean, we don't celebrate people because they're really humble about their achievements or accomplishments. We celebrate it because they have these big, bombastic personalities and blast it all over social media and really want to make sure everybody can key in on the highlights of their life and the great things we're celebrating. You know, and the truth is, being humble is probably not going to get you tens of thousands of followers on social media, and it's probably, I mean, maybe certainly not going to make you famous. But being humble is a critical component. So you may not get you all the glamorous things you want, but what humility will get you is a lot of influence in people's lives. And Jesus has a lot to say about humility, actually. And one of the first times he even talks about it is in the Beatitudes. Now the Beatitudes is a short little, like 8 to 10 verse section in Matthew chapter 5 that lays the groundwork for all of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus' most famous and frequently referenced teaching. So let's take a look at Matthew chapter 5 and see what Jesus has to say about being humble. God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the whole earth. See, this verse, Jesus says, blessed are the people that are humble. They're going to inherit the whole earth. So even though we live in a culture that humility and being humble aren't incredibly high values, Jesus still talks about it and teaches about it as though this is an critically important thing. See, this third beatitude is kind of the linking idea between all the beatitudes. See, the first two that talk about being poor in spirit and those who mourn, those are all inward-facing, inward-thinking beatitudes. But this third one where he talks about, blessed are those who are humble. This is where the idea, it starts to go outside. It asks the question, how do I interact with my world? Where do I fit in? How can I follow Jesus and be a person that fits in some way in the world around me? And the way Jesus answers that is by being humble. And of course, like every Jesus answer in typical fashion, his answer creates another question. Okay, so then what does it mean to be humble? Well, let's take a look at this old educational balance here, this little scale. All right, this is what I think Jesus meant by humility. So pretend this little character is you, all right? A little bobblehead for him. What he doesn't mean, obviously, is the scales are all tipped in your direction, right? Like you're an arrogant person. Everything's about you. Everything tilts towards you. You can't have a conversation without somebody without understanding them as people that just mirror your greatness. Like that's obviously not what he talks about. And that's an obvious one. We all know arrogant people aren't humble. But it's also this. If you're still this little guy here, but you're one of those people, you tip the balance away from yourself. You're constantly deflecting. You know, somebody gives you a compliment and oh, you just push it away. Oh, it's like the plague. You can't handle it. You don't want to hear it. Like, oh, no, it's just, that's not me. Well, that's not humility either. That's thinking inappropriately of yourself. See, it's not, I'm bad. And it's not, I'm better. Rather, it's, I'm balanced. I see people on the same level as me. No better, no worse. Being humble is knowing you and knowing who God created you to be. And because of who you are and how you were created, you are equal with those around you. It's not bad, it's not better, but it's balance. Things end up in places like this because they've lost value. And ideas and beliefs over time end up in a cultural thrift store where we put away things we don't want to think about or we think is antiquated and dated. That happens a lot too. But what I can guarantee will never happen is that won't happen to you and me. See, the value of something is what someone's willing to pay for it, and God paid an enormous price for you and for me. He sent his son to die on a cross for our sins so we could have a relationship with him forever. That's a wildly extravagant price. So if you ever question your value and you think, man, I'm gonna end up in the thrift store of life, right? Like I'm some second-hand misfitting piece that is probably a mistake anyway, and know that that's not true. You're not some second-hand throwaway. You were a first choice. So you may feel misfit, but know that it's not true. Because with Jesus, every misfit was made to fit.